The league season is once again upon us. Whilst the League Cup group stage has just finished, along with those playing in Europe ending their pre-season and some starting with their European campaigns, this is what everyone cares about. It also means that across the internet, people will be putting in predictions, and I am no different because of what kind of content creator would I be if I wasn't following trends to try and gain momentum in the algorithm. Most people will be focusing on the top flights of each respective national leagues, but I'm going to be a bit different. I will try, and ultimately fail, to predict all 42 SPFL team seasons along with who will win the Highland and Lowland leagues. I'm not going to predict cups because anything can happen in them. I could predict Celtic or Rangers to win both of them, but knowing my luck, Cooper Hearts or Wigtown and Bladnoch will end up winning at Hampden. So, with that out of the way, let's start working our way through the pyramid, shall we? Highland League. Buckie Thistle. Winners last season after missing out by less than 3 points the previous 2 seasons, I have gone with Buckie Thistle. The Highland League title will be tight, I think, with 6 teams possibly winning it, with Brora, Buckie, Bankside, Brechin, Fraserburgh and Formartine all being good shouts, but I've gone with the current holders. They have strengthened with signings such as Mark Ridges from Inverness, who was one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship last season, so I expect Buckie to retain their title. Lowland League. East Kilbride. Alright, I know it looks lazy just picking last season's champions to win again this season, but hear me out. Last season, East Kilbride won the league by 12 points, and with additions such as Jack Leach and Regan Mimnar, I can see them repeating last season's success. Of course, people will point to the 8-0 demolition done on them by Airdrie, but last season EK lost to Tranent 7-0 in the Scottish Cup and finished 21 points above them. Weird things happen in cup games. League 2. 10th. Edinburgh City. Yeah, it's just going from bad to worse for them, isn't it? Finishing bottom of League 1 last season with just 8 points, I just don't see them recovering from it well enough to avoid the bottom, and ultimately falling out of the league in the relegation playoffs. They have brought in a lot of young players, and while some are from other League 1 and League 2 clubs, a lot have been from the lower leagues, and it is simply a question of whether or not they will be able to make the step up. 9th. Elgin City. Last season, Elgin were in a relegation battle, and once again I have them fighting the drop. Elgin had a pretty torrid time in the League Cup group stages, only avoiding defeat to Kelty and with heavy defeats to Hibs, Queen's Park and Peterhead. Dejan Golding and Lewis Hyde have come in at Boroughbriggs to help keep them off the bottom, and whilst I do have them finishing 9th, I reckon the points gap between them and bottom will be greater than last season. 8th. Bonnyrigg Rose. 8th place last season and the season before that, I have Bonnyrigg finishing 8th once again. What can I say? They are consistent. Bonnyrigg were only able to get a draw against Annan in the League Cup, with a pretty heavy defeat to Dundee being a part of their campaign. They aren't playing against Dundee in the league though, so don't expect those sort of defeats. But the only notable rival has been Aaron Arnott from Raith Rovers, who from his limited time at Raith, I thought he was decent. This won't be a season where Bonnyrigg will be fighting for their survival on the final day though, seeing as they do like to make a habit of that. 7th. Stranraer. Last season's bottom place side, managing to stay up after beating East Kilbride, I have Stranraer finishing 7th this season. Scott Agnew has had a summer to get his side together, and from their League Cup performances, I would say they have definitely improved. Whilst they only got 1 point, losing on penalties to Stirling, they put up good efforts against both Raith and Ross County, showing that they weren't the pushovers people expected them to be. Whilst they have lost Josh Walker and Kyle Fleming, they have brought in Adam Cummins, Mark Russell and Thomas Brindley to name a few. 6th. Forfar Athletic. A team who quietly had a pretty disappointing season when you consider that their manager is Ray McKinnon. Actually, it may be as expected if you don't rate him. I have Forfar finishing in the same place as last time. Forfar finished the group stage with 2 wins and 2 defeats. Although one of those wins was due to co-fielding an ineligible player and the other was against Dunfermline, it was still a respectable campaign for a League 2 side. McKinnon has brought in Philip Franchak, Blair Malcolm and Mitch Taylor in an effort to hopefully be closer to the promotion playoffs rather than the relegation playoffs this time. 5th. Peterhead. The first team to be in the top half of League 2, we have last year's runners-up, Peterhead. Whilst they got 2 totally legitimate wins in this year's League Cup, I'm not convinced they have strengthened enough to maintain their 2nd place, and with it being quite tight at the top, I think they will just miss out on the playoffs. Whilst they haven't really lost anyone of note, they haven't done the same with incomings, with Max Barry joining from Bucky Thistle, along with Dylan Ross and Ben Armour from Stranraer, and Seb Ross from Forfar. Fourth, Clyde. A team that in November last season seemed destined for the Lowland League, I have Clyde in fourth. Clyde saw a remarkable turnaround under Ian McCall, and I predict that the resurgence will continue into the league season after a fairly impressive League Cup campaign, with a 5-0 win against Edinburgh City and a 3-2 win at McCall's former club, Partick Thistle. Clyde have brought in Darren Lyon from Arbroath, Tommy Robson from Queen's Park, Marley Redfern from Hamilton Accies, and a bunch of others from League One clubs in a bid to try and get out of the division. At the right end this time. Third, Stirling Albion. Last year, Stirling were relegated from League One, falling into the playoffs on the final day before succumbing to defeat to eventually promoted Dumbarton. Stirling got 3 points in the League Cup group stages. Granted, it was a penalty win and a penalty loss that got them there, so we'll be looking to improve when the league comes around. To help with this, they have brought in Derek Gaston from Arbroath, who is arguably one of the best part-time keepers in Scotland, along with a plethora of youngsters from Premiership clubs in an attempt to return to the third tier. Second, Spartans. Over to the capital now, and we have last season's promotion playoff runners-up becoming runners-up in the league this time. Spartans managed to top their League Cup group, giving them a game against Ross County in the second round. This was after wins against Forfar, Cove and Livingston, seeing them through in what is something they definitely did not expect. This is despite not bringing in many players, but with Callum Booth and Lewis Hunter joining, management must have thought that based on last season, the squad didn't need that much doing to it, which is fair enough. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. First, East Fife. My prediction for League 2's champions is Dick Campbell's men from Methil in East Fife. East Fife beat Morton and Brecon in their League Cup group, but a penalty loss to Alloa and a 5-1 defeat to St Johnstone prevented them from progressing. They have brought in Jess Norrie from Arbroath, Rhys Peggy from Bonnyrigg and Andy Munro from Forfar on permanent deals, along with Liam McFarlane arriving on loan from Hearts, who will all be looking to become the best thing to happen to the area since the rail link opened, which will make away days to Bayview a lot easier. League 1, 10th, Dumbarton. Last season's playoff winners and probably the easy pick here, but I have Dumbarton coming straight back down. Dumbarton finished 4th in League 2 last season, but were able to beat both Spartans and Stirling to earn promotion in the playoffs. A defeat to East Kilbride on penalties, a 4-3 defeat to Airdrie despite being 3-2 up with less than 10 minutes to go, a 2-0 defeat to Queen of the South, and a 6-0 defeat to Aberdeen don't exactly give the Suns hope going into the league campaign. And with the only notable signing being Mickey Miller, unfortunately I can't see them escaping the drop. 9th, Kelty Hearts. Back in Fife again, and this time we have Kelty Hearts, who I think will finish 9th this season. Whilst yes, they did beat Hibs in the League Cup, have we considered that this is Hibs in a cup game? Other League Cup results include a 6-0 defeat to Queen's Park, a 1-0 loss to Peterhead, and a penalty loss to Elgin, showing that the Hibs result was definitely an outlier. Kelty have been a bit of a slide these last few seasons, finishing 5 points off the relegation playoffs last season, and despite the additions of Scott Allen, Liam Brown and Brodie Patterson, I just think there are 8 better teams. 8th, Stenhousemuir. Last season's League 2 winners, we have the Warriors of Stenhousemuir coming in 8th. Steady comfortably won League 2 last season, where despite limping to the finish, they were ultimately 8 points clear at the top. Whilst their League Cup campaign didn't exactly go well, it was about what was expected. A big win against Bucky, followed by big defeats to Falkirk, Ayr and Dundee United. Kyle Banner will be a good addition to the squad, coming in from nearby rival Stirling, but he is the only notable signing, but they've kept a hold of their squad, which should be enough to keep them up. 7th, Annan Athletic. Surviving the relegation playoffs on the final day last season, there should be no worries as such for Annan this season. Annan once again performs well in the League Cup, with wins against fellow League 1 sides Arbroath and Inverness, which bodes well for the coming season, but a defeat on penalties to Bonnyrigg is what potentially denied them a place in the second round. Paul Smith, Paul McGowan, Jamie Smith and Malik Zayed have joined the club this season and should move them clear of the bottom 2. 6th, Cove Rangers. Up to the south side of Aberdeen now, and we have Cove, who I think will finish 6th this season. Paul Hartley's side finished 5th last season, but I think they'll end up falling down a place this coming year. Their League Cup campaign was hampered by playing an ineligible player against both Spartans and Forfar, but they were able to beat Dunfermline with a fully legal squad. Whilst they have brought in Declan Glass from Dundee United, which I think is an impressive signing, as I believe he's a championship calibre player, they have lost Roman Burrow, who managed to score 21 goals in the league last season. 5th, Inverness Caledonian Thistle. I have no hope of this team going back up. Duncan Ferguson is still in charge, a very dodgy owner, a mess of a summer. These all are going to get another video. 4th, Montrose. To the Angus Coast now, and we have Montrose, who I think will finish in 4th. Montrose have finished in the playoffs 5 times in the last 6 seasons, with 3 of those being in 4th place, so it seems fair to suggest that is where they will finish this season. Montrose were able to beat Clyde and Edinburgh City, along with grabbing a draw with Motherwell in the League Cup, which they hope to take momentum from into the league season. They haven't made many signings, but they have brought in Callum Hanna on loan, who I think will do well at that level. 3rd, Queen of the South. After what was quite the disappointing season from the Doonhamers last time around, I have Queen of the South finishing 3rd this time. Marvin Bartley is out the door, and with it, we have seen a complete rebuild under Peter Murphy. Queens were able to beat Dumbarton and East Kilbride in League Cup group stages, and with signings such as Kai Kennedy, Reece Lyon and Ross Stewart, I am expecting improvement from the Dumfries side. 2nd, Alloa Athletic. To Clackmannanshire now, and we have Alloa Athletic, who I have finishing 2nd. 3rd place last season, and only behind Falkirk and Hamilton, this is a good opportunity for Alloa to make an attempt at returning to the Championship after a few years in League 1. Alloa were able to get wins against Brecon and St Johnstone, but a defeat to Morton and only getting a penalty win against East Fife is what ultimately stopped them from topping the group. Like Stenosmuir, they have retained the core of their squad from last season, with Callum Waters joining from Morton being the main signing for them. 1st, Arbroath. Back to Angus, and we have who I believe will win League 1, and that team is Arbroath. Whilst Jim McIntyre's men had a pretty torrid time in the Championship last season, I can see them coming straight back up. Whilst the League Cup saw them only get a penalty win against Inverness and a 1-0 win at Bonnyrigg, some of the signings they have made seem to convince me that they will end up winning the league. Those signings include Keith Watson, Callum Gallagher, Robbie Hemfrey and Gavin Riley, who I think will take them back to the Championship. 10th, Dunfermline Athletic. I swear I'm not being biased, but Dunfermline are a mess. A League Cup that saw defeats to Cove, Forfar and Livingston. Their main goalkeeper is Denise Mehmet, who is on the 2nd year of a 3-year deal. Their only signings have been Chris Kane, Kieran Ngwenya and Kai McLean. I'm sorry, but I cannot see them finishing anywhere else. 9th, Greenock Morton. Last season's 5th place finishers aren't going to be that high this time, as I have Dougie Imrie's men down in 9th. Despite being 5th last season, it was still only 3 points above the relegation playoffs, and this summer has seen the squad picked apart by other Championship teams. A League Cup campaign that saw wins against Brecon and Alloa wasn't enough after defeats to East Fife and St Johnstone ruined any chance of progression. Departures from Capello include Robbie Crawford, George Oakley, Lewis Strapp, Robbie Muirhead, Lewis McGrattan and Jamie McDonald, with replacements being Cammy Ballantyne, Owen Moffat, Jet and an already injured Dylan Cole. 8th, Hamilton Academical. Playoff winners last season, we have Hamilton, who I have finishing 8th. I thought they would be involved in a scrap with the bottom 2, but some of the signings probably have enough to keep them clear of the drop. Their League Cup campaign saw penalty losses to both Reef and Stirling, along with a win against Stranraer and a loss to Ross County. Doesn't give much hope, but signings such as Sean McGinty, Ollie Shaw, Dyrod O'Connor and a certain Bulgarian called Nikolai Todorov, they will have enough to stay up. 7th, Queen's Park. Over to the south side of Glasgow now, and we have Queen's Park. Queen's Park had a pretty impressive League Cup group stage with demolitions of Kelty, Peterhead and Elgin, coming after a 5-1 loss to Hibs. That sounds great, but considering the relative quality of those teams to other championship teams, it might be a false dawn, but I still think they will be further clear of the drop than last season. This won't be helped by the fact that they have lost Rory Payton and replaced him with Zach Rudden. 6th, Airdrieonians. Over to North Lanarkshire now, and we have Airdrie, who I have finishing in 6th. 4th place last season, so a good first season back in the championship, but with this overachievement saw the dismantling of their squad. Airdrie had an impressive League Cup group stage with a 2-1 defeat to Aberdeen not being of concern, whilst a 2-0 win against Queen of the South, a 4-3 comeback win against Dumbarton, and an 8-0 win against East Kilbride, showing that Airdrie mean business. Whilst they have lost Todorov, Gallagher, Josh Ray, Charlie Telfer, Cammy Ballantyne, Callum Fordyce and Kieran Ngwenya, they have recruited well with Chris Mockery, Aidan Wilson, Ben Wilson, Cammy Bruce, and of course, Aaron Reid.
I had to delete a couple of players off just to make space, and yeah, Aaron Reid was in that category. Guys, I was like, I don't think anyone's even going to mention it. It's coming off the list. Oh, listen, you'll be keen to take this boy right off my toes, Tay.
Right. I'm gonna use my entry card.
Aaron Reid.
I was hoping for Tottenham, but it's gonna have to be fucking Aaron Reid. I don't even know who he is.
Oh, see if you get 1% on Twitter, somebody's misclicked.
I'm just 5th, Falkirk. Last season's unbeaten League One champions, we have Falkirk, who will not be repeating that feat this season. John McGlynn's side were able to top their League Cup group thanks to wins against Dundee United, Stenhousemuir and Buckie Thistle, seeing them through, with a 1-0 defeat to Ayr preventing an unbeaten group. Falkirk have kept the core of their squad, but with Jamie Snedden and Michael McKenna being the only new additions, they may not have enough to reach the playoffs. 4th, Ayr United. Over to Ayrshire now, and we have our first playoff spot going to Ayr United. Ayr finished down in 7th last season, but their transfer business has been fairly impressive in my opinion, seeing a much strengthened squad. Ayr missed out on qualifying for the second round of the League Cup on goal difference, as wins against Falkirk, Buckie and Stenhousemuir weren't quite enough to take them through. In the transfer market though, they have managed to add Scott McMahon, Anton Dowds, George Oakley, Mickey Devlin and Marco Roos to the squad, which I can see pipping Falkirk to 4th. 3rd, Livingston. Relegated from the Premiership by quite some margin last season, we have West Lothian side Livingston coming in 3rd. Livingston saw wins over Forfar, Cove and Dunfermline give them a chance at a perfect group stage, but would be beaten by Spartans, which, if other results went against them, would have seen them knocked out. Martindale's men are through though, but in the league they shouldn't be complaining about budget sizes, as with being relegated, they get parachute payments, and they have put that to good use, bringing in Matthew Clark, Robbie Muirhead, Ryan McGowan and Danny Finlayson, just to name a few. 2nd, Partick Thistle. Comfortably the 3rd best team last season. This time I have Partick Thistle in a title race, but not quite coming out on top. Thistle were knocked out of the League Cup due to a defeat at home to Clyde thanks to a rather funny own goal, and the game against Motherwell which saw them not being allowed to bring on a striker due to dodgy team sheet apps. When it comes to transfers however, they have made some excellent signings with Lee Ashcroft, Robbie Crawford, Dan Mackay, Logan Chalmers and Kyle Turner all moving to Maryhill. 1st, Reef Rovers. Bias alert, Reef fan predicts Reef to win league, what a shock. Let's just hear me out. Yes, Reef failed to get out of the group due to a defeat against Ross County, again, and only beating Hamilton on penalties, but when you consider that the core of the squad, which finished 14 points clear of Partick, has remained, along with the signings of Hanlon, Stevenson, Fordyce, Gibson and Sean Burns staying permanently, Reef arguably have the best squad in the Championship, and I'm confident that we will be seeing Premiership football at Starks Park for 2025-26. Premiership. 12. St Johnstone. Where we won't be seeing Premiership football for the 2025-26 season, however, is McDermott Park, where I have St Johnstone finishing bottom. The Saints were able to stave off the relegation playoff on the final day, but many people felt that if they were in that playoff, there's a good chance they would have gone down. They did manage to top their group in the League Cup, but a rather embarrassing defeat to Alloa has left fans concerned. In goal, they have lost Dimitar Mitov to Aberdeen, who was able to keep them in many games last season, and replaced him with Josh Ray, the only other notable signings being Uche Ikpeazu returning to Scottish football, and Jack Sanders from Kilmarnock. 11th, Ross County. This is going to make me look better. but for the third season in a row, we have Ross County finishing 11th. County were one of the few teams to win all 4 League Cup group stage games, but they weren't that convincing, with narrow wins against Raith and Hamilton, along with being pegged back by Stranraer. This is probably down to the fact that the squad has become a fair bit weaker compared to last season, as despite the signings of Ricky Lammy and Charlie Telfer, the Staggies lost starmen Jan Danda and Simon Murray to Hearts and Dundee respectively. 10th, Motherwell. Is she doing fine? Well, she's not getting relegated, but that is also what's happening with North Lanarkshire side Motherwell. Motherwell managed to squeak through their League Cup group with wins against Edinburgh City and Clyde, followed by a penalty win against Montrose and a penalty loss against Partick. The squad, however, could use a bit of work, with the departures of Theo Bear, Blair Spittle and Liam Kelly being replaced with Apostolos Stamtelopoulos, Andy Halliday and Christian Heggie. 9th, Dundee United. Last season's championship winners, which saw them get an immediate return to the Premiership, this time around, we have Dundee United in 9th. United managed to get through as one of the best second place teams in their League Cup group, with wins against Ayr, Bucky and Stenhousemuir. The jury is arguably still out on June Goodwin, but with signings such as Ryan Strain, Trapanovsky, Will Ferry and Jort van der Sand, they should be fine. 8th, Hibernian. Hibs are probably the most difficult team to predict. They comfortably beat Queen's Park, Elgin and Peterhead, but also managed to lose to Kelty in the League Cup. David Gray is in his first job as manager and has brought in Marvin Ekpiteta, Warren O'Hara and Josef Burschik to bolster his squad. Then again, this is Hibs. They could either finish 4th or 12th and I wouldn't be surprised. 7th, Kilmarnock. This is probably a bit low for Kelly, but I don't think they'll be too far off the top 6. They'll probably miss out by less than 3 points. Kelly's competitive fixtures have been in the Europa League, with a 1-0 draw with Belgian club Cercle Bruges being their only game at the time of writing. Sometimes European football can have an effect on the start of the club's league season, and it's that potential drop in form that I think will be the difference this season, especially when you consider they have only added Bruce Anderson and Robbie McCrory in the summer. 6th, Dundee. Back to Tayside now, and we have Dundee finishing 6th. In a season that will mirror last time out, the D will just miss out on European football once again. An impressive League Cup campaign that saw a 6-0 win against Inverness and a 7-1 win against Bonnyrigg bodes well for a squad that has seen the signings of Simon Murray, Ethan Ingram and John McCracken. 5th, St Mirren. Like Kelly, St Mirren are in Europe, but I think they will retain their European spot this coming year. Whilst their only competitive fixture so far has been a 0-0 draw away at Valor from Iceland, they were the much better team, so should go through. Unlike Kelly, St Mirren have brought in more than 2 players, with Sean Rooney, Alex Iacoviti and James Scott being some notable signings. 4th, Aberdeen. Heading north now, and we go to Aberdeen, where I see European football returning to Pittodrie. Aberdeen had a perfect group stage with convincing victories over Dumbarton, East Kilbride and Queen of the South, with a 2-1 victory against Airdrie in there as well. Jimmy Fallon has come in and will be looking to steady the ship following the quite mad season the Dons had last time around, but additions such as Dimitar Metov, Sivert Heltner-Nilsson and Peter Ambrose will look to bring them back to the top 4. 3rd, Heart of Midlothian. Hearts will continue making their case of being the 3rd club in Scotland with another 3rd place finish this coming season. Pre-season hasn't gone well with losses to Spurs, Leyton Orient and Fleetwood, but friendlies don't really matter in my opinion. Last season, Hearts were 12 points clear of 4th and will probably have a similar gap with the additions of Jan Danda, Blair Spittle and Kenneth Vargas on a permanent deal. 2nd, Rangers. Runners up once again, we have Rangers. Philippe Clement will hopefully be getting a full season to show what he can do, but with complaints about budgets and players such as Todd Cantwell wanting to leave, it isn't looking good for the Ibrox side. They have been able to get rid of Lammers, Lundstrom, Barisic and Goldson, which has opened up the ability to sign Mohamed Diomande, Hamza Igamane, Shefte and Connor Barron, but I still think they aren't quite title winners. 1st, Celtic. Finally, we reach our Premiership winners and I believe that Celtic will retain their title. Celtic were 8 points clear last season, and despite some disappointment from fans with the lack of signings, they still have the quality to come out on top. Pre-season saw wins against Manchester City and Chelsea, who's the Pub League now, which Celtic will be looking to bring into both domestic and European campaigns. In the transfer market, we have seen the departures of Haksabanovic, and Joe Hart retiring, but have seen the signings of Kasper Schmeichel, and the rumour mill is suggesting that Paulo Bernardo and Adam Ida will be making their loan moves permanent. There we go. All 42 SPFL sides plus Lowland and Highland League winners. I am sure I will get at least one correct. Maybe. How do you think your club's season will go? Did I over or underestimate them? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, liking, sharing and subscribing are appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.